Websites, letters, reports, memos, emails, brochures, press releases, LinkedIn posts, WhatsApp messages. These are all types of communication that is done in the written word. And that's what today's video is all about. Hi everyone, my name is Mehar Sindhu Batra and I'm back with another video. For those of you here for the first time, I make videos on all things related to productivity and positivity in order for you to accelerate your career and make a greater meaningful impact. Today's video is part 3 of Effective Communication series, where I'm going to talk to you all about written communication. And today's video is going to be divided into 3 parts. The first is what is written communication, the second, why it's important, and the third is some rules and tips to keep in mind when you are writing anything in written form, especially at the workplace or in a working environment. Like always, I have also made a worksheet for today's video, so don't forget to click on the link in the description box to download the worksheet on written communication. I also have an ebook coming up very shortly, which will have many more exercises and phrases that you can use to write impactful and powerful emails or reports. So to begin with, what exactly is written communication? Like I've said in my previous videos, what we communicate through the spoken word is called verbal communication. What we communicate without words, either written or spoken, that is non-verbal communication through body language, postures and gestures. And the third type of communication, which is very important in any type of business environment, that is written communication, where we use words or text to communicate our message to one or many people in the audience. Because it is a form of communication that has to be sent or written either by hand or on a computer, it is not something that would happen very abruptly. You will have time to think over it, which is why I think written communication is one of the most powerful and impactful ways of communicating if you get it right. Beauty of written communication is that we take our time and really think about our message before we send it. But of course, there is a disadvantage that written communication acts like a permanent record. So once you have actually sent something or written something, it cannot be taken back or called back. We must always make sure that our message is clear before we press the send or submit button. Written communication is very often used in our personal lives as well, whether we are sending a text message to our friends or sharing a post on Facebook. We must always keep in mind the audience who is receiving the message or reading the post that we have submitted, because it can work against us later as evidence or proof if our message is incorrect. That sort of leads me on to why is written communication important. The first one I've already sort of talked about, and that is written communication is like a permanent record of what you have said. And with the upgradation of technology, we have the ability to save everything on the cloud forever. So we have to make sure whatever we say is truthful, correct, clear and concise. The second reason why it's important is a poorly or vaguely written message can be misinterpreted or confusing. And because it's written communication, we should take our time to clearly and carefully draft what we're trying to say. The third reason is that written communication has the ability to reach a wide audience. If it's a report, an email, a memo or a press release, you know that the number of people who will be reading your message is going to be more than one. Which leads to the fourth reason why it's important is that anything you write in a written form helps you build your business reputation and helps you make an impression on others. So if your emails or your reports are clear, concise, truthful, well structured, everyone will think of you to be a reliable source of information and increase their trust in you. So now coming on to the next part of the video, which is some rules that I think you should keep in mind when it comes to any form of communication in written form. The first rule is keep it simple. There's a very famous quote by Albert Einstein: if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. And that means if you are trying to convey something, you should be able to communicate a very complicated message and put it in simple words in simple form, which is sort of connected to the second rule, and that is keep the message concise. Don't use very complicated words. Instead, use simpler words. Reduce the word counts in such a manner that you don't lose the interest of someone who's reading your message. The third rule is the audience. Before you start writing your message, you have to do your research and understand who is the audience for your message and write your message specifically catering to that audience. For example, if you're sending an email to your boss who is a very busy person, that person will not have the time to read long paragraphs of emails Instead, you will have to make it concise and simple in a proper structure so that your boss has the time to go through the entire message. And the same goes when you're sending an email or a report to a client. And that is the fourth rule, which is on clarity. You have to ensure that your message clearly communicates what you're trying to say. Don't assume that the person you're sending the message to already knows what you're talking about. That person doesn't know as much as you know, which is why you're sending them that report or message. The next rule is the flow of the message. Make sure it has a beginning, middle, and a conclusion towards the end. You want your message to be flowing from one fact to another seamlessly. The flow should be logical, and like I said, don't write long chunky paragraphs. Instead, break them up into shorter, smaller paragraphs. The next is grammar, punctuation, and proofreading. Don't be in a hurry to send your message. My rule is write once, read thrice. If I'm sending an email or a report to a large audience or someone who's an important stakeholder, I make sure to reread my message again and again, and maybe make someone else read that message also before I send out the final version. You don't want things like grammar, punctuation, typos, spelling mistakes, or any other small clerical errors to come in your way of communicating your message strongly. And the next is be courteous and polite. It's important to keep any type of written business communication formal. So using simple phrases like hope you are well at the beginning of a message and thanks and regards at the end of your message show good manners. And that brings me on to the last part of the video, which is a few key tips from my personal experience for you to keep in mind when it comes to written communication. The first is you have to remember your tone, your gestures, your voice, your pitch, your body language cannot be communicated via written communication. So it's important that you highlight the key points by either making some text bold or italics, just to make sure more emphasis goes on certain words or certain phrases. The next tip is always keep your message structured in bullet points instead of paragraphs. I always write my emails in bullet points just so everyone who's reading it can skim through the email. It also helps me to make it a story and make sure it has a flow and makes me think about what I want to say. The next tip is if your message is too complicated to put in written form, just pick up the phone and give the person a call before you send them an email or a text message. And after you've spoken to that person verbally, make sure you send a follow-up email or a message. Summarize the points that you have discussed. Keeping things in written form will make sure that neither of the parties forgets what was discussed. The next tip is something I have talked about, and that is being courteous and polite and formal. You should not use any emoticons at all. Another tip is if you don't know the person personally who you are addressing your message to, make sure you don't mess up their name or their gender. It is important to know and understand who is our audience of the message we are sending. And my last tip is always make sure that your email or your message has a conclusion. And I always like to end my emails or messages with, please let me know if you have any questions, or something like, I hope that was useful. Please let me know your thoughts. So make sure your message has a conclusion for sure. So that's it, my friends. That was all on part 3 of the series on developing effective communication skills. Don't forget to download the worksheet with the link in the description box. And I'll be back soon with part 4. And that will be all about visual communication. But until then, use my worksheet to practice writing effectively. I hope to see you soon. Bye.